You have all heard the story of how Benjamin Franklin, quote unquote, discovered electricity. Well, he didn't discover it, but he did win a prestigious medal from the Royal Society in 1753 for his, quote, curious experiments and observations on electricity. Franklin was probably lucky that he didn't get electrocuted when he and his son flew that kite with a key hung from its hemp string during a thunderstorm. He received only a mild shock to his hand, thereby observing conductivity. Ever since, humans have been struggling to harness more and more electricity because we, most surely, are going to need more of it. A story last week in the New York Times highlights a great electricity success story. Quote, "Steel production is getting cleaner," the headline blared. It tells how about 43% of planned steel plants in the United States will use electrically powered arc furnaces, up from 33% a year ago. It's presented as a victory in the climate change battle because the traditional way of making steel, by heating coal to make coke, which is burned in blast furnaces, causes 7% of the world's carbon emissions. The story does acknowledge a huge difficulty, though. The world's two largest steel producers, China and India, are not on board. Quote, "An estimated 88% of China's current steel production comes from blast furnaces. And in India, quote, the electric grid isn't reliable enough for electric arc furnaces." Perhaps most deflating, the New York Times story devotes only one sentence to the elephant in the living room, that most of the electricity to power electric arc furnaces here in the U.S. come from fossil fuels. Quote, "While electric grids in the U.S. and other developed countries are gradually using less oil and gas, it will be years before electric arc furnaces are powered by renewable energy alone." Notice the future tense there. Quote, "It will be years before arc furnaces are powered by renewables." Future predictions are the default position when present-day reality intervenes. And present-day reality is dealing a harsh blow to the transition to renewables. One example? Recent stories have been highlighting the problem with electric vehicles. Buyers are rejecting them. In China, unsold EVs are parked in storage lots by the thousands, even though they're heavily subsidized by the government to make them more affordable to average consumers. Same here in the United States, where the government subsidizes $7,500 of the cost of every electric vehicle, while also subsidizing the cost to manufacturers and to battery makers.
EVs are still losing money, about 20%, 30% margin. Ford recently announced that it expects to lose $4.5 billion on its EV sales. And I think it's just going to get worse in the U.S.
That prediction, based on how EV subsidies are not someone's idea of a Labor Day sales gimmick, but rather are mandated by the federal government, just as the move to all EV fleets in a little over a decade are being mandated by the federal government. These mandates have huge political implications.
We saw the example of what happened in China with all these cars piling up in junkyards. And at some point, voters are going to be looking for somebody to blame. When the cars are too expensive, there aren't enough chargers, the supply chains for the metals that have to go into these batteries aren't available, and it's just going to be a crunch of consumer dissatisfaction.
Of course, that too is a prediction, but one based on present-day reality. The reality is that our increasing reliance on electricity, whether it be for powering up our computers, our homes, our industries, our vehicles, and transportation, is exceeding our ability to generate it. When you throw out fossil fuels and our stubborn resistance to nuclear energy, the dilemma grows. Government mandates are increasingly clashing with real-world realities, such as the range anxiety of electric vehicle owners, the long waits at charging stations, increasing local resistance to what many see as the blight of wind and solar farms, as well as environmental problems with them, toxic metals in solar panels, and a new study which appears to confirm a link to increasing whale deaths and offshore wind turbines, added to the known risk of predatory bird deaths from those fast-spinning wind turbines. In some ways, we face the same dilemma as Ben Franklin. Electricity is all around us, but harnessing it remains the difficulty. Like Franklin, we may all be in for a shock. Hopefully, it will be one that society can withstand.
The United States produces more natural gas than anywhere in the world, and it's a clean burning and abundant source of energy that can keep gas prices low. So why are the Biden green energy policies aggressively taking aim at natural gas production? We're joined now by Steve Moore, Distinguished Fellow in Economics at the Heritage Foundation. Steve, welcome back to the show. Good to see you.
Hi, Lindsay. Good to be with you.
Okay, so you have said that the left has waged war on natural gas. It's interesting because if you look at it, natural gas has actually helped reduce coal emissions, and coal, which gives us cleaner air. So why is there a disconnect with the Biden administration and using natural gas?
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense, Lindsay. You know, in every way, natural gas is a wonder fuel. It's everything you want in an energy source. It's cheap, it's abundant, it's the most reliable source of energy. It's made in America, and it's clean burning, as you just said. So it actually reduces pollution levels that would be emitted from other forms of pollution. And for some reason, the Green Movement and the Biden administration are against natural gas. They have a policy of zero natural gas, zero coal, and zero oil. And the point I was making in the article you were referring to is we have more natural gas than any other country in the world. We should be producing way more of it because of the shale revolution, and we're not. And incidentally, I bet a lot of the people watching this show have natural gas for their home heating, and sometimes for your stoves and so on. And natural gas is much, much cheaper than to use electricity. So it's cheaper for families, it's safer, and it's good for the environment.
In that article in the Boston Herald that you wrote, you also say that we need states to redefine natural gas as a clean and net zero form of energy so that utilities can use it. Why aren't states doing that? Is that something that has to be done at the federal level, or can states do it?
It's really a state policy, and some states have done it. Some states are saying, yes, you can use natural gas, but there are about roughly 20 to 25 states that basically say to fulfill your what's called a renewable energy mandate, you have to get 30 or 40 or 50 or 60% of your energy from wind and solar power and so-called renewable energy and clean energy. But the point, of course, is, Lindsay, that natural gas is a clean energy. And in fact, I bet a lot of people aren't aware of this, but of all the countries in the world, the major industrialized countries over the last 5 or so years, the United States, we've reduced our carbon footprint and our carbon emissions more than any other country, precisely because we're using more natural gas and less coal. Now, I'm not against coal, but natural gas is a cleaner form of energy, and yet they don't want to use natural gas either. And by the way, you know, wind and solar power cause various pollutions and problems too. Look at what's happening with the whales. Look what's happening with, the birds that are destroyed. Look at the fact that you have to do really dirty mining in a lot of these African and Asian countries to get the minerals you need for the solar panels. So all forms of energy have forms of pollution. I actually think natural gas and nuclear are the two safest and cleanest.
And as you mentioned in your article, you say the U.S. is like the Saudi Arabia of natural gas because we are the #1 producer of the world. And as you mentioned, making it much cheaper. How much money could we be saving if we are using more natural gas?
Well, if we use more of our natural gas and more of our oil, because really this came from the shale revolution, where we were able to use horizontal drilling and fracking to get at new supplies of oil and natural gas we never had technological capability of producing. And so I estimate we could be saving the United States of America, you ready for this, $250 million a day, every day and twice on Sunday, if we were using our oil and natural gas.
Wow, that's unbelievable. It seems like, why wouldn't they be using more of it? The interesting thing is, President Biden is actually getting attacked right now from climate activists because they're upset that he's sending some of our natural gas overseas. This seems a little bit hypocritical. He doesn't want to use it here, but he's willing to send it overseas.
Yeah, and then you're exactly right about that. And then, equally hypocritical. But then when it comes to the oil, he doesn't want to produce our oil in Texas, in North Dakota, in Alaska, and West Virginia. But now they're trying to get more oil in from Venezuela. I mean, does that make any sense? Venezuela has dirty oil, and we have cleaner oil than they do. But it's better to get it from Caracas, Venezuela, than Houston, Texas. I don't get it.
I don't get it either. Steve Moore, thanks for bringing us this information. Always good to see you.